easy time of it, but he now finds himself clearly on the ropes because of those stumbles. But now the question is this: can his opponent make the most of it? Joining us now, James Webb, the former Secretary of the Navy. He's the Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate from Virginia. Mr. Secretary, thanks very much for coming in. By all accounts, this is a dead heat right now, the polling shows in Virginia. Why is that? Because George Allen was supposedly well on his way to a victory.
Well, I think a good part of it is the message that we've been putting out. Obviously, that the mistakes of the so-called mistakes of the Allen campaign have gotten a lot of attention, but what that has done is caused people to focus on this race throughout the country. And what I've been saying consistently from February to today is that we need to reorient our national security posture. We need to address the issues of economic imbalance in the country, and we need to focus on the abuses of power of the presidency. And I think that's really, people are starting to relate to that.
Now, everybody knows about George Allen's missteps, the macaca comment, the reaction when a reporter asked him whether he had Jewish roots, allegations that he used to use racial slurs. But there have been accusations about you as well, including an article you wrote in the Washingtonian magazine many years ago that was very negative as far as women in combat are concerned, suggesting the only women who might want to join the U.S. Navy would be the horny women. Since then, you've backed away from that. But explain to our viewers what your thinking was then and what your thinking is now about women in the U.S. military.
Well, that's a total mischaracterization of the article. The article was about whether women should go into specific combat billets and who should decide. It was an article that was written 27 years ago, and there were some rhetorical excesses in the article. We were all sort of throwing bombs at each other back then. I have apologized for some of the rhetorical excess, but I think that the debate was an important debate and needed to happen. And at the same time, when I was Secretary of the Navy, I opened up more billets to women, operational billets, than any secretary in history. And we've had a very strong level of support from women calling into our campaign after they saw some of the negative stuff that was coming out of the Allen campaign. So
you regret the use of words that you wrote that one of the halls at the Naval Academy is a horny woman's dream.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you said that twice, and and I've expressed my apology for language that I used back then, and at the same time, I'm going to say it again. I opened up more combat or more operational billets to women than any Secretary of the Navy in history. And if you look at my staff, there's a term in the law. It says res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. My campaign manager is a woman. My deputy campaign manager is an African-American woman. Our director of media is a woman. Our deputy director is a woman. My finance director is a woman. And I think that, I will say, the thing speaks for itself.
Well, let me just make sure that I understand. Your current position on women serving in combat units is what? Because it's still a little murky as far as I understand.
What I've said is that I am totally comfortable with where the military is today. This was never an issue about whether women should serve in combat. It was whether they should serve in specific billets, such as the infantry and the artillery, and also who should decide. And the military has been deciding that. I've had a tremendous amount of support from serving women in the military over the years. I've visited a number of commands at the invitation of female officers. And in fact, one of the 4 women who had participated in the original press conference by George Allen about this issue, one of the Naval Academy graduates, got so upset with the ad that he ran that she has endorsed our campaign as of last week. And we also have had other female Naval Academy graduates, one of whom assisted us in cutting an ad defending my positions and explaining it.
Do you think...
Now, can we talk about foreign policy?
We can talk about foreign policy, but I want to get your thoughts on George Allen and the allegations that he used a racial epithet. Do you believe George Allen is a racist?
I have been saying since day one, when there was an article that came out this spring when I was on the campaign trail during the primary about George Allen, that I do not believe it's for me to comment on this stuff. It's irrelevant to what I'm trying to do. I said the same thing after we walked off of the floor when we had our debate after the comment about his Jewish heritage, and I said the same thing again on the issue that you're addressing, that I've got a limited amount of time. I got 34 days to talk about what I want to do as a United States Senator, and that is to improve our national security posture, to address the issues of economic inequality in this country, which have become very serious, and to talk about the abuse of power of the presidency.
Do you see the Mark Foley scandal unfolding here in Washington that's bringing in the Republican leadership, including the Speaker and the Majority Leader, and all sorts of complaints, having any impact politically on Republicans in the state of Virginia?
You know, I've hardly got time to read my issue papers and my emails right now. And the only thing I will say about that whole scandal is that there is accountability to leadership. And if the leadership did not act properly, then there should be accountability. But I'm just not in a position to give you an opinion on that.
On Iraq, what would you do right now if you were in the United States Senate?
You know, Wolf, I was on your show probably close to a year before we invaded Iraq, and you asked me then, your question was, well, maybe it isn't whether we should invade Iraq, but when. And I said to you then, no, let's talk about whether. And I was an early voice warning against the implications of invading and occupying Iraq. And I've been saying for more than 2 years before I ever decided to run for the Senate that what we need to do is, A, get a clear statement from this administration that it has no desire for permanent bases in Iraq, and secondly, that we need to convene the countries in that region who have cultural and historical ties to Iraq in some sort of an international conference where we can bring a diplomatic solution and get our combat forces out of there. At the same time, preserving our ability to address terrorism issues, whether they are in Iraq or anywhere else. I think that's a decent formula. It's similar to what we did in Afghanistan after the '01 invasion, when we convened the countries around Afghanistan and brought them to the table. And it's similar to what Secretary Baker did after Gulf War I in the Madrid conference. And I'm going to be optimistic here, and I'm looking at this commission that Secretary Baker is now leading, and I'm hoping that after the election that this will be something that is proposed.
James Webb is in a very, very tight race with George Allen. We'll be watching that in these final 5 weeks. Thanks very much, Mr. Secretary, for coming in.
Okay, thank you. Good to be with you.
Jim Webb's the former Navy Secretary. Up next, the Foley scandal and the battle for control of Congress. Will the controversy keep conservative voters home on November 7th? Plus, Dennis Hastert points fingers at the other party and at the news media. Is